Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. Well, what have we got here? It is a bit more of a sidestep, which I do on occasion, as you probably become aware the more you look at these videos. But I do it so that it either enlightens me to another possibility I hadn't considered, or supports the direction that I'm going with this dome model. When you go from model to reality, well, as they say in some places, reality bites, and it can bite in a way that you hadn't anticipated. So having a real world background or a little bit of experience, you sometimes look at things in a way that other people might miss. I'm not saying that to say that I've got an insight or an inside road or whatever. It's just that there's some aspects that I appreciate differently. And one of them is how easy is it going to be to build whatever I'm talking about. And in some cases, very easy. The flip side, or to go with that, how good will it look after you've built it? Because easy and the aesthetics may not be natural bedfellows as you could think. These two domes are built very, very differently from the domes I'm considering building. The domes I'm considering building have their own elegance because they have lighter, sort of appearing struts, although in this case, not so much. The dome here has, and ignore the hubs for a moment if you would, but this is a 6x2 or a 150 by 50 timber. This here, in these models, they are 1-inch timbers or 25mm thick timbers, but screwed together very well and perhaps glued as well. And that therefore makes up the equivalent of a 6x2 or a 150 by 50. Equivalent, sort of. Now, the benefit of this is it's very similar to the split strut dome, the beveled strut dome structure that is very, very popular and very easy to build in relative terms. I think when you go from a dome to a quad specific dome, be careful about transferring one construction method to another. I'm not going to go to that point and say I don't like this, because I do, but you know me, or you should, or you will. I have an issue around here. If you stay with the conventional dome approach, where you've got the leg down to the ground like this, you've got a very considerable consideration to go through in this area here. If you want to fill in this little triangle here, each side of the triangle, as I've been talking about, then a lot of the issues go away. So, that is a 4-minute preamble. This is a different dome, one that I hadn't really looked at seriously because I don't like the look necessarily, but I've watched someone doing making an assembly of one of these domes, and I thought, it does actually have an appeal. And there's a couple of things. They were using timbers very similar in dimension as this, but I've always seen those sorts of domes, as I said before, quite unattractive for different reasons. A lot of it comes down to the look of the join. But if I can get over that, well, yeah. Anyway, so dithering about a bit, but it can even be that this lighter timber can be a lesser timber if you want to make like a hobby dome or a tent dome. It doesn't have to be of any particular high grade. This, yeah, it really does need to be a little bit better in the timber type or selection of the timbers that you may want to use. This one, a little bit less so. Maybe you could even use a good grade of boxing, just like a lower species timber boxing. But still, I'm just spitballing on this one because it's not really high on my radar, but it is at least on it where once it was not. Okay, this one is the non-conventional version. This is the conventional version. So what makes this version different? Well, these triangles are all individual as they are shown coloured. These ones, they're different, but they're different and the same. Anyway, we'll get to it. What I have done, because I want the ugly dome to look a little bit more attractive, is I mitered the joins. What that does, well, it makes the underneath side look a little bit more attractive. Well, it does at least in some of the joints. This one, yes, it looks quite nice. And there we go. This one here, it looks quite nice. And this one here, well, it's quite jumbled. When you get in and look closer, you can see that there is, I've got a little bit of an error there, but there is a lot of not flush surfaces there, which is not all that attractive, and you can see it here as well. They are, however, how am I going to say this? These are technically in their geometrically correct place. You know there's an issue with that. They all come to a common point here. If, however, in this box, I want to make this point here flush up, I can. But then this bit will be in the wrong position. So let's just have a quick go at that. Oh, let's back out one. I take that and I lower it to that point, and it looks nice until you can't go, oh, it's not that nice there. It's improved it on the, it hasn't improved it on the bottom as much as I'd want. Oh, and why is that? Well, all the struts are at a different angle to each other, so you can't really get a true mitre. And that was why I was saying it's a little, I find this particular approach, to the extent that I've looked at it, I find it particularly ugly. David, can't you put battens, over battens and under battens on it? And I'm going, oh, I can too, because they are pretty flat, if not dead flat, when they join together the different triangles. So can I fudge it with the battens? And the answer is, of course you can. Ah, well that's good then. Oh, David, couldn't you just grind these flat and put a plate on them? Oh, well, yes, you could do that as well. Oh, well done. I never thought of that. Like I hadn't. But there's lots of things that you could do with that. Now, before I tell you the downside of this one, let's go over to the more conventional, slightly more conventional approach to doing these sorts of triangles. Most of them are done in smaller depth timbers, not the wide ones like this, but the video I saw, and that's what twigged my interest, use these deeper, you'll be able to search it out, but they have like classes and videos showing this method. But as soon as they zoom in, you go, oh, there's the aesthetics are less than I want. Zoom out, and they do look like really nice domes. There's a French chap that actually talks and explains his domes, and then there's I think a Portuguese couple doing the domes as well. Same sort of domes, but it is what it is. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I'm interested, but not for the type of dome I want. So anyway, this dome is the more conventional one where you kind of step around how you make the joint. I've altered it slightly, so so this is the sort of joint you've got here, rather than the mitered joint, which I would prefer. Prefer it aesthetically, doesn't get rid of all the problems, a bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. But this is where you run one long like this, the strut, this part of the strut comes down, and this one butts into it. Same here, this one runs long, this one butts into it. Paul Robinson promotes that as a better way of constructing the dome, even to the extent that this one here would run long and this one short, because as you do that, you stagger where the joins come, not like this, where I've basically got a reflection of the joint, be that it's in two different triangles, but the strength of Paul's idea is legitimate, that this one here, this part of this strut, runs right through, which overlaps these joints, so makes it stronger. I think, in my humble opinion on not having built one of these, that if you're relying on that amount of overlap to give you that amount of strength, it might be an issue. Will it improve the joint overall? Yeah, I agree with that, because where you put your screws through, instead of, say, putting it, like I'm very vague, I know, but it's in my mind, it sounds good. If I put a screw through here, I'm really going in this direction. I'm really going into a very thin bit of timber there. But were that timber, or if that timber were longer, I go through there into a good chunky bit of the timber because it extended through further. So yes, I do agree with Paul. That is a much better way of structuring things, but it's not what I did. Could I? Yes. Did I? No. I retained the mitre in this position because it all works better than the other way. So normally, as I said, you'd run one long, run one long, but the other one into it. And as you went round the triangle, they would alternate. So anyway, I decided in that area there and this area here, I'd retain the mitre because it would have been easier. And I've inserted this part of the triangle in between the two side ones. Ditto on here, and I think you can see that. Here, I mitered these two because it looks a whole lot nicer in that. Look, if this is going to be exposed, you'd want it to look something, you want it to look attractive. So, the benefit of doing this is the angles here are they're right on the borderline of being between obtuse and acute. So it's going to be close to a 45. It's not. Could be a 30 degree. Most miter saws can cut 30 degree cuts, or 60 degree rather. The way it's printed out on the scales on the miter saw. But this is a more normal miter. This one, not so much. And these ones are definitely acute angles and maybe a little bit difficult to cut on most people's miter saws. Possible, of course, but difficult, yes. Some of these are around about, one of them was 21 degrees, might be even going down to 19 degrees. So that 19 degrees is equivalent of, just say, a 71 degree cut. Most saws or most capable saws go to about 60 degrees, and that's a lot. To go down past that, you need the sketchy builder accessory, which I've been showing, the miter station accessory that can cut down to 0 degrees, which is kind of like a little bit unnecessary, but it can, and safely, and I'm going to say easily if you've got a digital angle finder. So this is why I've been saying that some of the overlap between the dome building and the Dave's Diary will be centered around this sort of issue, being capable of building something in the workshop with the average person's tools, and, well, you can make a dome using those said tools or accessories. So, yeah, I like this because this dome because it has the separate triangles that can be bolted together in different, how would you say, stages. So that these two yellow ones could be bolted together and become one unit. All of these green, and that's why they were all coloured the same colour, these become one unit. The green, rectangle, the red, exactly the same. They can be created in big in modules for a dome like this, instead of having to individually assemble the triangles one by one. In fact, I think that would, in this type of dome, that would be rather wise. Now, it could get to the point where if you've stabilized this triangle by props or an additional bit of framing, it could be that you lift this particular green assembly together into place and prop it in place. Do the same for all four of them. Put the red one in independently, just pop it up through the middle off of scaffold, preferably, or a ladder, not preferable. But and then pop them in. You've effectively got a stable structure. Then pop in these yellowy orange ones. That's a sequence that you may want to consider. You could, because of the weights, maybe be able to assemble everything on the ground without the legs, of course, then lift it, jack it up by whatever means that you've got to your disposal, and then pop the base onto it, the legs onto it. Would this be heavy? Of course it would be. But then if you've got the means to maybe even construct it elevated on scaffold, you could then slide the legs into place somehow. I don't know. I'm just making it up. But you could slide the legs in, bolt it together, and then just drop it down off of the supporting structure. It's all things that are possible. Some things I see when people are making domes I cringe at, because it's like, well, I've done the same thing. I don't want to do that anymore. And if you have one mistake, you can get hurt. So, yeah, there's all of those sorts of considerations from a professional builder's perspective that we now look at and go, oh yeah, I remember when I used to do that. Oh, I wish people would stop doing it. So, those things. So, no, this is not a one of the total redraw, top left-hand corner there. It's not a part of the series, but as I said, it does allow me, or affords me a look at an alternative idea to see whether it confirms what I'm doing is more valid. Is this easy? Yes. Would the average DIY capable, builder probably be more wise to try this sort of dome? Probably. To be fair, maybe go back to the hexagon shapes when you're doing it. Maybe. Don't mind that idea at all, actually. But what do I want? Well, it's not that. So it comes back to this. This is the level of aesthetics that I wish to have. So therefore, the one I'm going with. Right. Now, I will get to looking at these hubs, and what I'm looking at doing is considering a slightly different approach, just by way of spitballing it, but one where the top tabbed plate and the bottom tab plate are different sizes, and maybe, just maybe, the strut is cut square, doing away with the need of having an angle at all on the strut. That has a bit of an appeal. I've got a couple of queries for it, but at the moment, quite intrigued with that idea. How would you say? The struts would be, in fact, I'll do it right now while we're talking. The struts would align because when you've made your hubs, where you bend is where it registers to your strut, or vice versa. The strut registers to where it bends. And, oops, I don't want to do that then, do I? And therefore, that is the length of the strut from that point there back. Maybe. But it gets a little bit tricky. And I can explain that in the video that when I look at that one. But that means that the hub on the bottom can be a lot smaller, shorter in the tab area, by about 25 millimeters shorter here. And of course, being a little bit shorter, it's a bit stouter and more rigid, i.e. stronger. So if that is true, that's not a bad thing to have. And the downside, what is the downside, David? Well, it comes back to the same old thing again, and probably why I won't do it, but I've already looked at it last night, or early hours of this morning. But as we extend this part of the dome that way, because it makes sense, it all bangs into each other. So then you have to start trimming the bottom. So the main culprit, or main area of concern, is this strut here. If I extend that out, it's going to bang into this strut. So, yeah, and I don't really want that. If I'm going to make life easy, I want to make it really easy, not half easy. So that's the next thing I'm going to be looking at. It may well be that I look at it and just shake my head and say, nah, not prepared to go there with that. Let's just stick with the same dome structure here, hub structure here, same top and bottom. Yes, they'll be offset somewhat vertically, but I've tried to show that here by the, let's just get rid of that. Oops, let's not get rid of that. But where the bolts, were you to use a bolt, where it comes through here, it's quite, it's at a certain distance here, but you can see how much different the distance is at this point. Equally, the distance away from the bend point here, you can see how close it is at this point. Now, that impacts how much meat there is in the strut. Because remember when it was, hang on, let's just go back a little bit in time. I'm just going back to the point where maybe I've gone past it already. Hang on. I may have, but anyway, I may have gone back too far. The angle of the strut, it makes the bottom part of it quite close to where you would put the bolt, or the bolt close to the end of the strut, either way you want to look at it. But that's kind of important because you don't want it busting out here because of the lack of timber resisting that that pressure. So in fact, a lot of the struts that I've looked at, they don't use bolts, they simply use heavy duty screws. Righty ho. That was the look there that I was wanting to cover. And, well, we can get there by a process of elimination. Have a look, make the considerations, and then we'll go from there. Okay, that's it. I know I'm wandering off in my thoughts process, so I better end it, hadn't I? Right, I'll see you in the next one, hopefully with a wee bit of a update on what my thinking is currently on this for the series of dome building videos. Okay, see you later now. Bye.